All right, here we go. So today you're going to learn how to use watercolor with the Croqui figure, and it's actually very similar to what we did when we did the traditional shading with the colored pencil. So this time around we're going to learn how to apply watercolor to our Croqui figure using the same exact shading principles. So just as a quick reminder, when we look at our spheres, right, we just want to remember that shading is according to where the light source is coming from and then where the shadows fall. So it's that same exact principle. So what I'd like everyone to do right now, live and virtually, you're going to create a little light bulb for yourself on one of the sides of the Croqui figure. For today's demo, I'm actually going to choose the right-hand corner. And I'm going to draw a little light bulb for myself. I want you to do the same exact thing. Okay, make a little light bulb. And so now we know that all of our highlights are going to fall on the right-hand side of the figure, and our shadows are going to fall on the left. Okay, it's the same exact principles. So what you need is your watercolor palette, and you're going to need a brush as well. And of course some water. This is my palette right here. So the individual circles that hold all of the watercolor paint in the palette, do you know what they're called? They have a fun name.
Cakes.
Yep, they're called cakes. Okay, so we're going to be taking our color from the cakes, and then we're going to be mixing and blending our colors on our palette. So whether you realize it or not, most watercolor sets, the cover that normally closes your palette, that's what you actually can mix and blend your colors on. So you can use that directly. Okay? All right, so just to get started, you can either do this next to your Croqui figure on the side of the page or get a blank sheet of paper. It's totally up to you. We're just going to practice first creating gradients. Okay? So we know what a gradient is, right? What is a gradient? Yep, Michaela F. just said it. So she's like, when you have that smooth blend, that smooth transition from dark to medium to light, right? Okay, you can pick any color that you want. It's totally up to you. I am actually going to start with red, right over here. So start dipping your brush into your palette. It doesn't matter which color. I'm trying to get this nice and wet right now. And then I'm going to apply my color into the mixing palette. And you'll notice I'm getting like a nice saturated amount. Okay, just to start. So right now my brush is nice and saturated with that color. Okay, and here's what we're going to do. So we're just going to practice first making like a little shading tornado with our brush. So right now it has the most color. That's going to read the darkest. All I'm going to do is apply my color. I'm going to work in a horizontal motion, back and forth. This is my dark. And as I want to get lighter, what do you think I should do? How do I start to make my watercolor lighter?
Add more water.
Add more water. Is that what you said, Mackenzie? Michaela? No. Exactly. So I need to add more water. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to dip my brush into my water, and I'm going to dab off the excess. So it's really more water than pigment at this point. And I'm really just kind of using the color that I already have on the page down. And I'm going to work my way back and forth in that horizontal motion. And as I go further and further down, it's going to get lighter and lighter. And I might even say to myself, you know what? I still want it to be lighter. I want it to get so light that it's almost matching the white of the page. So at that point, I'm going to dip my brush in the water again. I'm going to dab it on my paper. And then I'm going to extend it down even further. And because this page is still wet, I'm able to manipulate the color that way. See, work my way down. Lighter, lighter, lighter. And if you ever feel like it didn't blend as much as you wanted it to, you can always go back in and touch things up, especially when it's still wet. It's very workable to get it nice and smooth, you see? You might have noticed that once I actually kind of dry off my brush, you can actually pick up some color. Like let's say like you got like a little splotch somewhere. You can actually go right in, pick up that color, and wipe it off on your paper to get it even smoother. Okay? So what I want you to do is practice a few of these on the page. Practice blending. I'm actually just for now going to get a blank sheet of paper so that I have more space to work with. You guys can do the same. So we'll practice a few of these. Just creating your gradients from dark to medium to light. Okay, so darkest, we have the most pigment on the brush, the most paint on the brush. I wet my brush a little bit. I can spread out my watercolor. You want to be careful not to oversaturate with the water too. That's why we dab the excess water on the brush. And then we extend it down. Okay. Work our way down. I feel like there's still too much pigment on the brush as I'm working my way down, so I could still wipe it off. And I'll continue. And if I still feel like there's too much pigment, I really rinse my brush in that water, dab it, and continue. So the interesting thing about watercolor is that in a way it has a mind of its own. It's a funny medium that way. And what I mean by that is with watercolor, you can never 100% control it. It bleeds, right? It expands out on the page because of its nature. It's water-based, right? And that's fine. It's really good just for kind of blocking in basic shades and tones and kind of working very loosely. However, it's versatile in the sense that once it's dry, you can layer other media on top of it. So as I mentioned earlier, like you can blend colored pencil right on top of this and it will look beautiful and you can be much more detailed with it. Okay? All right, we're going to try another effect. Are you ready? Okay, we are going to try to blend different colors together. Okay? In this case, we're going to try to create an analogous color scheme. Does anyone remember what analogous means?
It's when the colors are
Yes, okay, analogous, you were close. It's when there's 3 or more colors right next to each other on the color wheel. So for example, it could be red, orange, and yellow. Or it could be green, blue, and violet, okay? Any combination of colors on the color wheel. So we can make a sunset. It really doesn't matter which 3 colors you choose, but we really just want to practice blending them together. And we also want to practice keeping our palettes nice and clean and neat and not contaminating colors with each other. So I'll explain that in just... All right, so you guys can choose any color, but for this demo, I am going to decide to work with, let's see, you know, I think I'm going to stick with my red just to start, and then I'm going to work my way into an orange to make it more like a sunset. Okay? So here's what I'm going to do. On my palette, here we go. This is where I initially had my red paint. Okay, I'm mixing into the red. Here we go. And I'm leaving a nice generous amount of it on my palette. Now, I'm also going to mix, I'm going to bring orange onto my palette. So I have some orange right over here. And I'm going to start to saturate that orange, the cake. I want to get a nice amount going on my brush, and I keep dipping into my water. as I generate more color on the brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my orange separate from the red. Okay, trying to get a little bit more. There we go. Okay, now when I want to dip into a new color, do you think it's a good idea to rinse your brush first or just go straight into the other color on your cake palette? Rinse it. Why do I say rinse it first? What do you think? Yeah, so that they don't mix and they get dirty. So you can actually see on my palette here, I was not the person to previously use this, but we want to avoid this. Do you see how like right now on my palette, you could tell that, you know, someone who was using this obviously had other colors on their brush and they were like kind of dipping into the cakes. So you want to avoid that because you want to keep your palette nice and clean and clear so that your colors don't get contaminated with other ones. So like I want to use this yellow right now, but there was obviously orange mixed into it, but luckily with watercolor there's an easy fix. So let's actually go over the fix because maybe your palette looks like this. Just by brushing some water into this palette, I'm taking that excess color that was on there and then I'm just kind of wiping it away. You can see in the background, I'm getting rid of that previous color that was on there first. I'm trying to clean up my yellow here. Okay, now it's looking good. And then I'm going to give my brush another good rinse so there's no color on there. And proceed like before. I'm going to bring that yellow onto my palette. But I will say it's a good habit to always remember to clean your brush in between choosing colors from your cakes. Okay. So now I have a nice amount of the red, the orange, and the yellow. So that is my analogous color scheme. They're right next to each other on the color wheel. Alright, so I'm going to begin with the red in my palette. And just like before, I'm going to make a little shading tornado. But in this case, I'm not really focused on going from dark to medium to light. I'm more focused on blending my colors together. This is more so what we're doing. So I'm starting with the red. And then the next color that I want to blend into is my orange. Now I have two options. I could just go straight into my orange and work my way into my red. That could work really well. But another option is if I have the red on my palette already, I can take some of that red and then I can take some of that orange separately and pre-blend them on the palette together and then add them onto the page because it will blend nicely. Okay? Then I'm going to rinse my brush, go back into my pure orange. So the truth is we're really mixing colors in between because in between red and orange is red-orange. Now I'm going into a more pure orange and I'm working my way down. And the next combination, before I even jump straight into the yellow, which two colors would I blend together? What do you think? Yep, orange and yellow. So we could say like a yellow-orange. So I'm combining the two on my palette first. You want to pre-blend. Working my way down the page like a beautiful sunset. Okay, and now I really just want to go into my pure yellow at this point. Work my way down. Isn't that pretty? Okay, and I'm kind of looking back in here and I'm saying to myself, you know, there's some areas that could be enhanced a little more. Maybe it got pale over here. between my yellow and my orange. I can always layer some more colors back in if I want to and work my way back for a smoother blend. And I can touch it up. And especially after this dries, you can always layer more color on top. Always. Like I'm looking at my red and I'm saying, no, it could be kind of nice to make it a bit stronger. Maybe it got a little washed out. And this is part of shading. Like if I wanted to go darker, that's the way to do it. Let it dry a little bit. And shade that color right on top. Okay. So how are we doing with our blend so far? I want to hear from all of you. Okay. Mia, how are you doing? Good. All right. So practice this one more time on the page, and you can do any color combination that you would like. Any color combination. Because the truth is, I just want you guys to get the hang of blending your colors together, right? Going from dark to medium to light. Those are the two main things. And actually, I'm thinking about it. I want to practice one thing with you all right now. We're going to try it. Okay, on your page, I would like you to draw a circle. I want everyone to draw a circle. Because this is going to lead us to shading our Croqui figure with watercolor. All right, so we have a circle, but we want to create the illusion that it is a sphere, right? And we're going to choose where our light source is going to come from. So let's see, just like the spheres, we want to go dark to medium to light to create that illusion of form, create a gradient. I am going to have my lighting this time come from the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to draw my bulb. I want all of you to do the same. You can pick any direction that you want. It doesn't matter. Okay. And this time we're going to do another analogous color scheme. So I want to change it up. I chose warm colors before, the red, the orange, and yellow. I think I'm going to go with cool colors this time. So like the violet, blue, and green right next to each other on the color palette. So what we're going to do is we're going to shade the sphere using an analogous color scheme, and we'll blend 3 colors together. And it's not just about blending the colors this time, but it also is about making them lighter as they go up towards that highlight, towards that light source. Okay? So I'll give you guys a moment just to kind of set up your palettes. I'm going to do the same thing here on my palette. So here's the violet on my palette. I'm going to saturate the cake, get that color going on my brush. I'm just going to prep my palette first before I apply any color. That's important, always prep. Okay. All right, so here's my violet on my palette. I'm going to get more. I want to get a nice amount to work with. Okay. And my next color that I'm going to use is blue. So I'm going to work that blue right on in. Okay, my blue's going to sit right next to it. I don't have a lot of blue left in this cake, but we're going to make it work. Okay, then after my blue, I'm going to set up my green. What's nice about this particular palette is it has a lot of different shades of green. I'm going to go with this more vibrant one. It's more of like a warm green, like a lime green. I like it. I think that will be nice. Okay, I feel like my palette is nice and set. I'm going to rinse off my brush. Remember, you always want to start with a fresh brush, no pigments on it to start. Okay, so now I'm going to go right into my violet. That's going to be my darkest color. And I'm going to start applying my color on the shadowed portion of my sphere. Just hand it to me. No, it's okay. Thank you. Sorry, 1 second, girls. Okay, thank you. All right, so here we go. I'm going to apply the paint on the bottom of my circle. I want to turn this into a sphere. So do you notice the direction that I am applying this color? You can call it out. Am I going straight with the circle or am I curving it? Curving it. Why am I curving it? Yes. Okay. So because I want it to mimic the form, I want my circle to look dimensional. Okay. So there's my violet, but I can blend. I can make a blue violet and start to layer my blue right on into it. I feel like I got a little too much water, so it's like a back and forth dance. If it's too wet, you can always dab that color. And I'm getting lighter as I approach my light source, and you'll notice I keep going in a curved direction. I want this to feel like there's real form to it. So let's pretend this was an egg shape and it was the face. This would be the same exact technique that we would use. Now I'll go right into my green, and I'm watering down my green on the palette because if I'm in such a light area at this point, like going towards the highlight, I don't want it to be too saturated. So I'm really kind of being careful and light with that color. Maybe I could go a tinge darker. And I'm blending into my previous layer. I'm going to overlap that green into that blue to make sure that the color blends really nicely. And the key is to also leave the white of the page alone. I can't stress this enough because your lightest highlight will be the white of the page. So you never want to completely cover up your white. But what you can do is water down your color so much that it blends just beautifully into that white, but then leave it. Okay? All right, so there we go. That's a gradient for a form. Okay, that's a gradient for a circle and turning it into a sphere. We're giving the optical illusion that it has form, like it's three-dimensional. So going forward, that's what we're going to be doing with our croquis figure. The next time that I see you, that will be part 2 of the tutorial. So today, we learned a few things, right? So we learned how to create a gradient and go from dark to medium to light with our watercolor just by adding some more water. We also learned how to create a blend between colors, whether it's an analogous color scheme or really any color scheme of your choosing. How we blend from one color to the next to the next. And then the sphere is the combination of those two things. So it's blending our colors together while going and creating a gradient from dark to medium to light and working our way from shadow to light source and creating dimension while we do it. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that tutorial today, and we will continue with it tomorrow.